Final chapter, guys. After this, we've covered all the theory. Then you guys are ready to look at past papers. Okay, so I've encouraged you guys during the semester to try look at the practice exercises in your study guide. Okay, because in those study guides you've got questions and answers. Okay, and if you have any problems when you are covering those questions, bring it to me during class. We can discuss it. Okay, I'm normally here a bit earlier, so if you have anything specific that you've done that you're not sure of in terms of how to calculate, now we can discuss it. Okay, I want to do as many past papers as I can with you guys, and that's why we're going to be looking at past papers from next week onwards. Right, so every single week until your exam. Your exam is in October, mid-October, 19th, yeah, somewhere around there. So we've got about 3 weeks or so, okay, to do past papers. That's the scope for the rest of the semester. Okay, I'm going to try to do minimum one past paper a week. Right, I've got older solutions, so I'm going to give you those. You guys have that. I'll probably do it this week. I'll send you guys all the answers that I've got for the older past papers, and I'll give you the copies of the PDFs that I've got. Sometimes UNISA doesn't post all the old papers. They just post the more recent ones. If you guys have got the 2017 one they wrote last semester, send it to me, and then we can do it next week if they've uploaded it. Okay, I obviously want to do the newer past papers because then we can create solutions for them, so then you guys have more questions and answers that you can use to prepare. Okay, just a note, obviously preparing for exams, best way to do it is past papers, past papers, past papers, past papers. You've covered the theory, so if you've watched all the content over the last few weeks, you should be okay with the theory in the book. Now you need to practice applying what you know. Right, so you should know what the rules are, you should know what the different accounts are. Now it's practicing. Okay, so accounting is that type of subject. It's not a cram subject. You can't study in the last week and expect to pass. It's not going to work. With a module like this, you need to practice for the exam. That's how you do it. Okay, so what I would suggest you guys do is try create a timetable for yourselves to do past paper questions. Maybe every week, take a past paper and try to do it yourself, because we'll be doing past papers together when we meet every week, but then you still need to do more. Okay, you can't only rely on these 2 hours. Okay, it's not enough. You do need to do more past papers outside of class. Okay, if you have problems with any of them, let me know, so when we meet and we discuss, we can address those questions that you're struggling with. Okay, right, but you'll see when I do more past papers, you'll get a feel of how to actually answer the questions. Right, FAC1503 is actually not that bad, purely because they do test quite a bit of theory from the UNISA study guide. The last few chapters at the back of your book, you won't find that theory anywhere other than the study guide. If you look at this textbook, you won't see stuff about law practitioners in here. So you won't see trust accounting. You won't see practice management, any of that. Study Unit 16 is focusing on the theory. So to start off, we need to look at the forms of ownership, okay, or forms of enterprise. We get different forms. You get a sole proprietor. How many owners in a sole proprietor? One individual. Okay, so one person is going to be running a business, and as a law practitioner, that's generally how you start your practice. Right, you specialize, and you then become expert in one area. Law is very broad, so you want to offer more services to your clients. What are you then going to do? Start partnering with someone who's also a specialist in a different area of law. Right, so now I'm going to offer clients services in one area of law, maybe property, and then let's go maybe more commercial, maybe family, maybe contract, depending on what you're going to be catering for your clients. Right, and that creates a partnership. And that's 2 to 20 generally. You can have more than 20 partners. You do get very big law firms where there are many partners that are part of the organization. Once we've grown the partnership, then we're going to consider creating a company and formalizing it. Right, so you'll have a company that's actually representing the employees. What's different with a company compared to the first two? So how are the first two different from the bottom one? let me ask you this. If you start your own law practice and you decide to retire, does your law practice continue to operate? If you're a sole proprietor, it wouldn't. Okay. Even a partnership, if you're in a partnership and you both have a stake in the business and you're operating as a law practice, if the one partner decides to leave the business, what will happen to the partnership? It will dissolve, and then you're going to have to create a new one. Okay, because partnerships have an agreement. Okay, contract. Okay, so you literally sign a contract between parties to say we're in a partnership. Right, so what's the difference between the top two and the bottom two is the top one has unlimited liability. Meaning, if you can't meet the debts of your business, can your creditors take your assets? Yes, they can. Okay, unlimited liability. Another thing is, there's no separate legal entity. Okay, so when you enter into contracts, you enter into contracts as an individual, right, as a person. Okay, so if you're going to let's say if you're going to hire an IT company to help manage your servers, okay, or your IT infrastructure in your company, your business, okay, then you're going to enter into the contract as an individual. Right, if Northern Rose, or what are the other big firms? Weber Wenzel, okay, those big law firms, if they had to enter into a contract with a provider for IT services, the company is going to enter into the contract. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's a separate legal entity. So at the bottom, we have a separate legal entity, meaning those businesses are going to continue for a long time, even after people have come and gone. Okay, so lawyers come and go, people come to the business, they leave, the business will still operate, the company will still operate. Okay, and that's the difference between the first two and the last one at the bottom. Right, in your textbook, they talk about these sections: compensation of partners. They look at managing your clients. They look at managing HR, physical resources, financial resources, and then the legal work and the practice systems. These are practical things that you would have to do as a law practitioner. Okay, someone who's running a law practice. We need to practice. We need to look at past papers. That's the theory. Let's go to your study guide and have a look at the detail that's covered in practice management, topic 8. It's the final chapter, chapter 16. It's short. It's on page 279. The first bit here is looking at different forms of enterprise, which we spoke about. You get a sole proprietor, you get a partnership, and you get a company. Okay, all three can be used to operate a law business. Okay, a law practitioner. As a law practitioner, you can operate under any one of these forms of ownership. Minimum number of members, 1 for that, 2 for that, 1 for the company. Okay, this would be a private company where there's personal liability. Legal personality, not separate, not separate, separate. We spoke about that. Companies that are separate from the owner will continue to run after the owners have left the business. Management, obviously as a single individual, it's easier to manage and run your business. There's not a lot of, let's say, discussion, negotiation, all of that you need to do as a team. Okay, obviously the more people you bring in, then the more difficult it is to manage the operations. Okay, because people obviously create problems sometimes, okay, not all the time. The name of the entity, no legal requirements for the first two, then incorporated for the last one. Okay, it's a private liability, personal liability company. Capital is looking at access to finance. Income tax. If I'm running as individual, so sole proprietor, one person, or partnership, many, well, not many, two or more, okay, there's going to be taxes that need to be paid as an individual. Okay, so you would have to pay your own taxes. The business doesn't pay tax on its own. If it's a company, the company actually pays its own taxes. Continued existence, meaning this will continue forever and ever and ever. These two will, inverted commas, die or end if something happens to the partner. If the partner retires, if the partner leaves the business, if the partner chooses to, what else? They could retire, die, or, pardon? Go mad. Okay. Well, true, there needs to be capacity. Okay, so they have to have capacity to operate. So obviously if they're crazy, or so you're referring to not having the right mental state to operate, then that would be true. Okay, that would be something that you could consider. So there's a few things. Obviously, if a new partner is going to be admitted, then the old partnership has to end. See, it's not always dying and retiring. It could be expanding. Okay, so let's say you two, okay, the two of you are in a partnership running a law practice, okay, and then we want Given to attend and join your partnership. What must you guys do? Dissolve the partnership between the two of you and then enter into a new one with the three of you. Okay, just use that as an example. Make sense? Okay. Right, just some background regarding the partnership agreement. There needs to be the names of the different partners, purposes, scopes, and partnerships, and so on. Just a tip. When looking at past papers, I've always seen them focus on this, like lists of things. Okay, so when you see bullets, or when you see lists coming from this last chapter or from the theory chapters, make sure you study them. Because if you look at the past papers, they generally ask about these like bullets, these points. Okay, they ask you give 3 points, give 2 points, give 4 points, depending on what year you're looking at. Okay, but that's what I've seen in older past papers. They tend to focus on the lists in the actual study guide. Okay, so when you see bullets, it's worthwhile to read it, to go through it, and to also study it maybe going into the exam. You'll never be asked to provide all the points. You'll only be asked to create maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Okay, it would be unfair to ask a student to remember word for word all the points. Okay, there's another list. Compensation of partners. Right, so compensation means what? How you get paid. Do you agree? Okay, so you get paid according to your number of hours. You get paid in terms of fees that you collect. You get paid in terms of new business. You get paid in terms of contributions. Okay, these are other things that could be considered as part of the system. Okay, so not only compensation for us, but also compensation for our employees. Right, so if we have associates or support staff, we need to compensate them. If we have management or supervisors or senior managers, we're going to have to compensate them. And then years of practice. Obviously, the more you've, let's say the more experience that you've gained in the industry will come at a higher compensation. Okay, think about it. The people that are what do they call them? The senior advocates. Okay, lots and lots of experience. Right, so obviously compensation there is going to be based also possibly on the years of practice or years of service. Okay, it could be based on your experience. Right, when managing clients, what must we look for? Describe your ideal client. As a law practitioner, what client would you want to have? Okay, one with resources, important. Okay, obviously you're offering a service, right? You would want clients that can afford to contribute toward the trust account so that you would have funds that you can then pay on their behalf. right, to do certain things, okay, to register their bond, etc. Right, so they talk about an engagement letter. Why do you need to have an engagement letter between the business, i.e. your business practice, and the client? Why is that important? Correct. Okay, you need the proof, okay, that you are acting on their behalf, and you also need to manage expectations. Right, what is it that you are asked or tasked to do? Okay, what's the scope of your engagement? Okay, that's why you're going to need an engagement letter. So they said the nature and the scope, the basis of the charges. Okay, so how are we going to be billing our clients? Is it based on time? Probably. Limitations, what can't you do? What services can't you offer? Right, sometimes law practices can't do everything. They can only cater for certain things. Then you would have to mention that. You'd have to tell your client, well, this is what I can offer. Right, are you willing to take us on as a provider? And then billing process, how are they billed? Right, here's another list, fees. Do you remember the different journals? So you get a business CPJ and you get a business CRJ. A business CRJ could also be called a fees journal because lawyers earn fees. Right, so fees would be an income that the business would provide for in the books of the business. What would you then have to record? Well, detail. You'd have to look at the time. You'd have to look at the amount of maybe work involved, the limitations, okay, the experience, whether the fee is fixed or contingent. Okay, so do we get paid out now or in the future? Okay, if we win the case, then do we get paid out? We might get a payout in line with the result. Okay. Managing human resources. Are people easy or difficult to manage? Difficult to manage. And if I'm in the law industry, do we need to recruit people according to qualifications? Yes or no? Definitely. Okay, so you need a certain level of qualification or experience to perform certain roles. So when looking at recruitment and hiring of employees, we need to make sure that those individuals are meeting our requirements. Can they help us complete the legal work that needs to be done? Are they capable of representing our clients? Training. If they're not, we might have interns. Okay, we might have people. So for example, obviously you're going to have to intern and you're going to have to put in hours in order to qualify completely, like fully, okay, to be part of the bar. And that requires training, it requires supervision and so on. Evaluation is important. We need to check, are things going well? Okay, the only way we can do that is by evaluating people's performance. Feedback. Let's hear from our employees. Okay, let's hear from our clients as well. That's a good point. Okay, so are our clients happy with our staff members, our service? Exactly. Good. Compensation, that's the paying again, and benefits. Okay, benefits, remember this is looking at HR. So how many leave days do you have to award your clients? Okay, remember, not clients, employees. Right, you've got a basic employment act that you need to meet in terms of requirements. So if you're hiring individuals, you need to make sure you meet the legislation around law for employees. Okay, promotion. Sometimes people want to get promoted and move up the ladder at the company. That's something to consider as well. How are we going to rank, okay, in terms of hierarchy? Okay, senior managers, junior managers. What is the hierarchy like? Then you've got retirement. At some point in time, you would want to retire. So now, what's the succession planning? Okay, how does the business continue after the partners, or after some of the partners are going to retire? Okay, so when partners retire, what happens next? Okay, here's a list again. See, when you see bullets, make sure you cover those in detail, because as I said, it's generally what they focus on in older past papers. Okay, we don't know about the newer past papers. We'll have a look at those when we continue with them next week. Okay, so this is looking at disciplinary measures. We need to be fair at all times. That's important. So when looking at disciplinary actions that can take place, there's going to be some sort of system that needs to be followed. Right? So do we give warning letters? Right? Do we call people in and have a disciplinary meeting? Okay, do we have a discussion? And what are we trying to address? Okay, what are the problems? The process and content of the system should be communicated to all employees. Okay, so everyone should be familiar with what the consequences are if we don't follow all the rules. The system should include a starting point in terms of the complaints. Okay, so how do we raise complaints? Are records accurate? So are we going to keep all the details? Okay, keep a paper trail. Communication of charges against an employee should be delivered timelessly. Is it important to keep track of that? Why? Can you practice? Can you practice if you have certain charges against you? No, you can't. It creates a problem. Right, so if you have a criminal record, right, that's going to be a problem for the law practitioner, right, or the person trying to offer a service in that particular area. Okay, so things like that need to be kept on record, right? You need to keep all that information. It needs to be given to the employee as well. Okay, so if the employee has done something that needs to be highlighted, it needs to be given to them as well. Okay, they need to be informed. Right, this is what you did. Okay, this is something that needs to be communicated. Right, reprimands, written warnings, terminations also communicated to the employee by the supervisor. Can you appeal? You should be able to. Okay, remember, it needs to be fair. Right, so the appeal process is part of the process. Right, if you're not happy with a specific decision, then you should be given the right to appeal. Right, and have a second opinion. Have someone else basically review what actually took place. Right, then you've got physical resources. Do law practices have physical resources? What would some of them be? Journals. Okay, so actual like technology. So nowadays you don't really have journals. Like you wouldn't have paper journals with all your receipts and payments. Okay, you would have files. Okay, so an accounting file on a computer. Right, so you definitely have technology. You'd have phones, you'd have technology, laptops, PCs, tablets, etc. What else would you have? Office space, so the design of the office, so furniture, chairs, tables, meeting rooms, land and buildings. Would you have security? Definitely, especially for your records. Okay, because remember, as a law practice, you need to archive all your cases. Right, because what happens if someone comes back to you a few years' time and say, well, can we see these documents from this case? Are you going to have to show it? Of course you do. Okay, you need to keep that track record. Right, you need to keep all those records safe in case people need to come back and review that information. Right, what's the difference between leasing and purchasing? Do you guys know? What's the difference?
Well, when you lease, that's when you're renting out something.
Good.
And when you purchase, you buy with the intention to own what you keep.
Perfect. Right, so as a law practitioner, resources are important. You need physical resources to operate. So you might not want to buy a building, you might want to rent an office. Both are suitable for running a business. Okay, again, lists. Lists are important. So there's another one. Although every firm is unique, most require at least the following in order to operate. Okay, this is looking at technology. Okay, so you need to be able to process documents. You need to be able to book dates, okay, meetings, etc. Time and billing, you need to be able to manage that. There needs to be financial management, so an accounting software package. There needs to be a database, so who are your clients? Where are they situated? Spreadsheets, presentations, etc. All of this is part of what the business would need in order to operate. Okay, most businesses will need this, not only a law practitioner. Okay, then they talk about office equipment, which we spoke about. Maybe one that we didn't, the printers. Okay, so obviously you guys deal with a lot of paperwork. Okay, and that needs to be printed and filed and maintained. Furniture, carpets, paintings, etc. Obviously, businesses need that to operate. Okay, then financial resources, which we've spoken about, capital. Where does capital come from? either the owner, and what do we call that capital? What do we call that capital that comes from the owner? Owner's equity. Okay, so the owner will give equity, or where else can we get capital? Correct, the bank in the form of a loan, so versus debts. Okay, debts would be the loans. Okay, so I go to the bank, I take out a loan to start the law practice. Or I'm going to ask for equity from my partners. Okay, so you give some equity to the business, you give some equity to the business, and both of you run the business. Expenses, outflow of benefit. Okay, we've looked at these definitions. Here they're looking at the control and management, the practice management. Okay, so is it important to control your expenses? Yes, so that's a form of budgeting. Right, so what must the business do? They need to keep source documents. Okay, so if you go to a lunch meeting with your client, are you going to bill that? Probably. Okay, it'll either be billed as a company expense or it could be billed as a client expense depending, okay, on what's it for maybe. Okay, income. Also, something that you need to manage. Okay, so the fees that you are going to be billing your client needs to be managed and maintained, right? And you need to be able to generate, okay, those invoices, those legal documents that will help you record all your accounting transactions correctly in your books. Right, compensation, salaries and wages may represent from 50 to 70% of overhead. What is an overhead expense? Any idea? It's an expense that you have to incur. Right, so for example, if you're operating a law practice and you don't have any cases this month, are you still going to have to pay your employees? Yes, you will. Okay, that's what they're looking at. So overheads. Overhead meaning the cost that must be covered month to month. Same thing as rent. Is rent an overhead? Yes, you're going to need to pay for the rent, the building. Is water, electricity an overhead? No. Okay, water, electricity would be a operating expense. Okay, the day-to-day running of the business. Okay, if I don't use any water and electricity, you're not going to have to pay for any water and electricity. Right, so you pay for it as you use it. Overheads is looking at those expenses that you have to pay, irrespective. Rent, insurance, salaries and wages, things that you are obligated to pay. Okay, and then borrowing we spoke about, which was the debt, taking out loans. D-E-B-T, debts. Right, managing legal work. Okay, the product, obviously we're going to be leveraging intellectual capital. Okay, you guys deal in an industry where the knowledge is actually more important. That's why people with lots of experience in the law industry, okay, can demand such high salaries or can bill such high amounts. Okay, purely because they have a lot of intellectual, leverage. Yeah, you could use it as leverage in a way because they have that knowledge, they have that ability. Okay, they know what the cases are. They've seen past cases. They've lived through it. They've experienced it. They've got the knowledge and the experience. Right, instruction and training is key when looking at growing the business. You need to train people. You need to make sure people know how to do what they're supposed to. Assuring accuracy. That's very important. You don't want mistakes and errors. You want to make sure that things are correct. Research might be something that a law firm might do. Okay, because think about it. You're actively engaging in that industry, so you could be a contributor to a textbook, all right, in a specific area of law. Okay, maybe you're dealing in family law and you deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Okay, that individual would be probably the best person to ask to write a textbook or a chapter about family law because they have that knowledge and experience. Right, so research is something that law practitioners are also going to have to do and they're also going to have access to. Right, so you would want to have access to other people's knowledge and information. Okay, almost like a search engine. Okay, you want to search for things that you require when you need it. And communication, we know how important that is. Okay, then we've got practice systems. The keyword is system here. If I'm looking at a system, what am I focusing on? A system refers to what? The way we do things. Okay, the process. So when I'm looking at a practice system, if someone is going to come to your business and want you to represent them, would you follow a system to take them on as a client? You probably follow a specific system. Okay, so let's get information about them. Let's get them to fill out a form, perhaps. Okay, let's get them to disclose certain things to us, or maybe sign an engagement letter or something like that. Okay, to establish the relationship. Right, so they break this down into a few different systems. Substantive. Okay, substantive systems ensure that matters can be handled routinely. Okay, what is a routine? The way you do things, and it's a specific way of doing things. Okay, it's a routine. Right, it's how do you always do things. Document assembly systems. Okay, so you guys know that some of your documents can probably be files and files and files of information. That needs to be processed. Administration. Invoices, making payments, paying your suppliers, receiving money from your clients. That all is part of your admin. Okay, you might have an administrator or an admin person to assist with all the back office work. And you've got calendar and ticker systems. Very important for you guys. Why? You generally bill in terms of your time. Okay, you bill clients in terms of your time. Okay, so how many hours did you spend at the client? Okay, doing whatever it is that they were asking you to do. Okay, so that's also important. Then you'll have a system for that. Okay, and that's the end. Something else that I can highlight as well that I've also seen is that a lot of the time, you'll see when you go through those older past papers when I send it to you, the exercises and solutions in this chapter sometimes even come up as questions in older past papers. Right. We've actually seen them use some of these lists. For example, let me have a look at this. This one. Okay, HR. I remember this was a question in one of the papers. This one, I don't think so. Capital, financial planning, no. Oh, the systems. I think I've also seen the question with the systems, and that was it, yeah. Okay, so all theory, guys, from that particular chapter, chapter 16. It's mainly studying. You just got to go, and what I would suggest you guys do is at least read over this chapter once, okay, and then read over it again before you go into your exam, just to familiarize yourself with the information in this chapter.